Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime. I was about to say ho ho ho, and welcome to the to the Lunchtime series where we add value to people's lives, happening every Wednesday and Thursday on eBiz Radio. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all major podcast channels. And to help us grow the channel, please follow, like, and share with everyone. In today's marketing and leadership segment, we're joining me as per usual, marketing and communications expert and co-host Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing? And here's to 92 shows. Hey?
92 shows, Kevin. There we go. Raising a glass to that and to the last show of the year. So, yeah, good to be chatting. Looking forward to a bit of a break ahead as well. And during the time, think about some really great new topics and some great new guests that we could actually pull onto the show next year.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some fun and games at home with all the rain happening at the moment. So we had a bit of a flood, which I've never experienced. But I mean, besides that, the year's been extraordinarily busy, Craig. I don't know how you found it, but for me, it's felt like, I'll wait for you.
That says 3G jumped into Wi-Fi again. Boom. Sorry. Now I'm on proper Wi-Fi again. That should be great. Yeah, you were saying the year's been extraordinarily busy.
Yeah, I just found that we've gone from one moment to another moment, and it's everything. It's almost felt like we're rushing through the year, And I mean, I don't know how you've experienced, but I feel like everyone is. And not only are they physically tired and getting through the year, I find that people are actually emotionally fatigued.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think, but first and foremost, I think it's been a year of high output with no changes in billing. And in fact, in many instances, I look across my other cohorts in the industry, clients are being demanding more for less. And I get a sense that the same is imminent for next year. Looking at some of the reports on media budgets, creative budgets, and things like that, and there's definitely going to be a real big load of pressure coming into next year. But the mental fatigue is the one thing that every single individual that I talk to is feeling. They just want to be able to step away, disengage. And I was doing some reading, Kevin. It takes at least 5 days for the brain to shift and move away from that constant work pressure thinking and all the rest of it into a state of idleness or different kind of thinking. And you're barely getting into that realm 5 days in when you've got a few days left and you jumping straight back into the office. So I hope that folk do get a chance to genuinely mentally disengage and refresh, because it has been a tough year mentally.
Absolutely, I hear that, and I completely agree. I think it's pushed a few buttons that we didn't expect we could actually achieve, and now our brains are kind of going, yeah, but you're close to burning out. You're close to running on the fumes here.
Yes.
So I think disconnecting and some holiday time is going to be well deserved for everybody. So, Craig, I mean, before we kick off with our last show for this year, what are our takeaway points for the listeners that we had for last week's conversation, which was a really rather interesting conversation about those Gen Zers and millennial people and
I went back through the report again this week, and it's just a fascinating report. And every single one of my colleagues or friends who have kids in the Gen Z spectrum, I actually have shared content of the report with them just so that they can get to understand the nuances of their kids. And it's quite fascinating when some of them have lent in and went like, wow, we now get it. This really is absolutely on point. And then the others are going, I think my kid's maybe an outlier in that sphere, but nevertheless. So the report we looked at was titled Generation Z, GWR's Generation Report on the latest trends amongst Gen Z. The report was published earlier this year and provides a number of key insights relating to Gen Z. So the key takeaway points are noted as follows. Firstly, climate change is their number one long-term concern. Not only that, but their optimism for the future of the environment is slipping. They have their shortcomings when it comes to being eco-friendly, but brands need to really show eco-consciousness where possible to gain that rapport with Gen Z. The second point is online TV is now the preferred way to watch television. Q3 2021 represented the first time that Gen Z were actually watching more online TV than broadcast. YouTube and Twitch now have some serious competition as online TV is growing and becoming the channel of choice worldwide. Third point is Gen Z have a truly global focus, and I really like this point where they're interested in exploring the world and trying new things. This represents a great opportunity for brands to sell foreign content or products to this generation. But Gen Z also makes a range of different lifestyle choices now around the likes of plant-based dishes, teetotalism, and a hustle culture. This obviously presenting, again, enormous opportunities for brands to engaging with them in very, very different ways. The fourth point is TikTok continues to gain ground. Gaming is just as big as one would have expected it to be. With Instagram and both Gen Z's, Instagram is both Gen Z's most used and favorite social media platform. This is changing, however, as TikTok is definitely making some serious inroads and demonstrating rapid growth. But on the fringe of that, the Gen Z engagement on the ByteDance app outside of China has risen 47% since Q2 2020. Gaming is just as big as you may think it is, with 90% of Gen Zers say that they play games on any device, more than any other generation, which makes gaming an integral part of their culture. Again, this presents enormous opportunity for brands to engage with Gen Z through gaming and in-game branding. Brands do, however, need to take advantage of the ongoing developments in the space and find their new opportunities if they are to appear genuine. And the last point, Kevin, this time from McKinsey.com, though, is that 88% of Gen Z do not trust eco-friendly claims. A really important statement. Gen Z cares more about the planet than any other generation. As such, one would expect this generation to be the most on guard for inconsistency in the environmental messaging. And a 2021 survey noted that 88% of American Gen Zers said they don't trust brands' environment, social, and governance claims. Gen Zers can therefore be quick to cancel or take their business elsewhere when experiencing a brand that they see as being insincere and untruthful in their messaging. And those are the key takeaway points from last week.
Fantastic, Greg. And guys, if you want to go and check that out, you can check it out at all the Lunchtime series on YouTube, but as well as all the major podcast channels available today. So, Craig, what are we going to be chatting about in our last conversation of 2022?
Yeah, Kevin, I want to expand on the last point that we've just covered, that being the fact that Gen Z really cares more about the planet than any other generation, and they have enormous potential to make or break brands in respect of this belief. But I want to look at it from a slightly different angle, this time that of brand activism, and how brands are actually taking action in support of some of the challenges that the planet and people are faced with currently.
Yeah, I mean, we did mention last week, Craig, that, you know, some of the big brands like Balenciaga, that's on on their spree of weird advertising or marketing campaigns that they put together, and people literally, you know, doing sort of an entire series of unpacking the bad and really getting people, informing people of, you know, what's being said out there. And I think that's what's really concerning about Elon Musk doing the things he's doing, but also it gives people that platform, right? It gives people that platform to actually say, no, you guys need to know that this is happening and this is bad. It does do that, which it's a double-sided sword here, that, you know, like sometimes it can be really bad, but sometimes it's necessary to put the truth out there.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to touch on some really good examples of that, Kevin. But yeah, I came across a couple of really good references on the topic, including some great insights from Philip Kotler and Christian Sarkar's book titled Finally Activism. And just firstly, to set some context, though, let's take a look at some of the definitions of what brand activism is. So the first of the two I'm going to reference is, according to Wikipedia, Brand activism is one way businesses can play a role in the processes of social, political, economic, or environmental change. Applying brand activism, businesses show concern not for profits, but for the communities they serve and the economic, social, and environmental problems, which allows the businesses to establish a value-based relationship with customers and prospects given. Businesses express their brand activism through the vision, the values, goals, and communication and behaviors of the respective organizations. And that's in their projection of the brand towards the communities they're part of. And unlike corporate social responsibility, CSR, and environmentalism or social and corporate governance politics, which are marketing driven and corporate driven, brand activism is society driven. And I really do like that. According to activistbrands.com, brand activism consists of businesses' efforts to promote, impede, or direct social, political, economic, and or environmental reform, or STARSs, with a desire to promote or impede improvements in society. And take note of the two words in use there. It's a natural evolution beyond the values-driven corporate social responsibility and environmental, social, and governance, or ESG programs. And it's also a step above purpose. And I really do like this. It's above the why does the business exist. And it's because it's directed at the common good. Kevin, it's also important to note that brand activism is different because it is driven by justice and fundamental concern for the biggest and most urgent problems facing society. And again, according to activistbrands.com, it gives life to what it means to be a values-driven company. And as you know, you can't be a values-driven company if you disregard society or your employees or your customers or the communities you work in and around the world. And it's about what you do, not what you say. But again, referencing Philip Kotler and Christian Sarkar's book, Finally Activism, we note that brand activism isn't just progressive in its intent, it can also be regressive in its intent. And for me, this was a good learning. So an example of regressive activism is big tobacco. So whilst you think regressive is a negative word, it actually has a positive outcome through the application of the big tobacco example, where the large tobacco companies denied the harm their products did to consumers, even when their own research revealed otherwise. They promoted the virtues of smoking in a way that actually hurt consumers. Companies that lobby our politicians for regressive policies are regressive brand activists. And the strength of the power of the world to lean in and truly understand the negative impact that such companies are making has brought about this revolution within Gen Z in particular, because they are the ones who are calling out these regressive companies. So there's a real good positive outcome on the back of the Gen Z behavior here. An example of progressive activism is that we're seeing many companies actively wanting to make a difference to some of society's biggest problems. And these companies have a larger purpose than simple profit seeking and are increasingly seen as leaders in the industry. And those are the organizations that the Gen Z are really pairing with and supporting and creating great loyal relationships with.
Craig, you know what's interesting about the conversation we're having is the word activism. Very often we associate it to people fighting about something. That's how I have the association to it. But I think, looking at the word progressive activism, I think what I'm starting to notice, and, through the content that I consume to a large degree, is really driving the agenda of, for lack of a better word, awakening, right? And really getting people to start paying attention to, the information and the information that's out there, and, drawing the blinds and kind of going, okay, cool, guys, actually pay attention to this, because there's something going on here. And there's so many examples I can think of where there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. Those are my sources of go-to for all of this information. But awareness and enlightenment on information is really being pushed to the foreground. So, and I mean, I'm not an activist by no means, but, I'll definitely when I see that it is for the common good, and I think that sort of platform is or that that foundation is where it comes from, so that people are actually starting to pay attention to more, like climate change, which is a really good example. I'm glad to support that, and I would have anyone on the show kind of going, cool, this is stuff that people need to know, because I think that's how we start changing the narrative, and we start shifting the narrative of how social media actually works in our favor and can work in our favor.
Very much so.
So, I mean, Craig, do you have relatable examples of progressive activism in action?
Kevin, absolutely. And there's just one campaign that always stands out for me in this regard, and that's the campaign of Nike and its relationship with Colin Kaepernick. I just want to quote from the article, Why Brand Activism Wins Over Brand Neutrality, which I came across on ubermetricstechnologies.com, which is a leading content intelligence platform for marketing and PR experts. And the article notes the following, Karen. While some companies will simply go on record to communicate their stance on a controversial issue, others might launch campaigns or initiatives in order to rally people around said issue. Is brand activism all for show? No one can say for sure. It might seem as though some companies engage in brand activism simply because it aligns with their mission and core values. But on the other hand, it's undeniable that brands do get plenty of economic benefits out of brand activism when done right. And a recent case is Nike's decision to feature Colin Kaepernick for the 30th anniversary of the company's famous Just Do It campaign. The campaign caused, in part, feverish debates among consumers and marketers, particularly on social platforms, but seems to have overall paid off for the company. Kevin, you're probably well aware of the campaign, but yeah, just to set some context again, the campaign featured Colin Kaepernick, who was the former NFL quarterback, and it featured him with the slogan, "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Just do it." And that in itself is an incredibly powerful statement, to say the least. And it really, it stood out for me because it represents everything that he did do. If you look at the Netflix series of Colin in black and white and the story of his life, and really worth watching that if you haven't seen it, to understand his belief in the statement of believe in something, even if it means sacrifice everything. And the fact that Nike stands for that as well just brought this great relationship and pairing together. And again, for part and parcel of the context, in 2016, Colin Kaepernick started to kneel before the pre-game national anthem in protest at the racial injustices in the United States. And this action had some serious repercussions, both for Nike and for Colin as a sportsman, with him not actually being drafted back into the NFL since leaving the San Francisco 49ers in 2017. But what I really appreciate here is that while there was backlash against Nike itself, with videos being uploaded to social media, people burning their Nike products, etc., the campaign was actually deemed a success, with take note of stocks rising by 5% in the week following the advert's release. And yeah, a key point to note is that since Nike is a sports gear and apparel company, their products fitted well into the campaign strategy because it actually highlighted a celebrity athlete that is known worldwide. And the main objective there was to bring headline attention to the campaign by highlighting athletes that were pushing boundaries in society in some way to send a specific message to their target audience and influence the perceptions and brand loyalty. And as you know, that was highly successful in this regard. So to close on the point, Kevin, I just want to quote a paragraph from the case study that I came across titled Nike's 30th Anniversary Just Do It campaign with Colin Kaepernick. The case study was published on sites, psu.edu, which is the Penn State University site. It was written by Brian Ervitar and Courtney van der Grift and published on September the 28th, 2021, and it notes the following. By taking a stand for a controversial social figure during a time of political disarray, Nike took a risk to convey the brand as a platform that brings attention to important social and political matters. Since the launch of the campaign in 2018, Nike has continued to represent themselves as an organization that supports local communities and athletes. by bringing more thought to the important social issues such as systemic racism and police brutality. Their objective is to use sport as a platform to accelerate social movement and reflect their brand as an organization in favor of activism and reform. And a really great paragraph that really encapsulates the intent behind why Nike partnered with not just Colin Kaepernick, but a number of other well-recognized and respected Black athletes in the world.
Craig, just correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this directly related to the George Floyd situation that actually happened as well around this time, where kneeling down on someone like that, and the actual kneeling was actually saying that stuff like this needs to come to an end?
So the two are not directly associated to each other, where one event happened and the next came about, but the general construct of the message, awakening and awareness of the police brutality, because Floyd wasn't the only individual that died at the hands of police, or others that were incarcerated incorrectly at the hands of police. But this was an opportunity to really highlight and inform and allow people a platform to actually put their mark or fist in the air or knee on the ground to make a statement. So yes, it was in the construct of a period of unsettlement that was happening in American history, and it obviously fed to the solver of what was going down around the Black Lives Matter movement at that particular point.
But I mean, Craig, it still stands to the fact that if you're gonna have a brand that is as powerful as Nike, to kind of go, why not have a brand that powerful to be able to make a statement that big? Because they could. They're Nike, like they have the backing for it. They have the ability to do it, and someone needs to do it, right? And not to veer off the conversation, but that common theme that you spoke of, that's higher than purpose, is the common good of what people are actually trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I look at we had the floods this weekend, which I mentioned earlier, and we were just trying to save and pick up furniture and pack furniture, and really just we didn't really know what to do. I've never been in a situation like this before, and we walked outside to kind of see if our neighbors were experiencing the same thing, and there were probably 100 cars in our street with people in our little town coming to help all the people on the river move furniture and move their stuff and get it out of the water, and and then it really solidifies that common good conversation that we're talking about here, right? It's a whole different level, but what sort of occurs to me is, at the heart of it, I think the agenda that people are essentially driving, and the more we do it, the more we get there, and the more awareness is built around it, is that the common good, that we all actually have the common good in common, and we all just want to live better lives, and we all just want it to be better than it has been. So I love the fact that people are using activism in this way. I think it really does push conversations which people tend to just want to veer away from, because they're tough conversations to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would just love to read a couple of theses on the production. Firstly, how that idea came about for Nike, and what the sell-in internally was like, and how long it took them to make the decision, because genius to the creative agency, I think it's Wieden Kennedy again, if I'm not mistaken. Huge respect for all of the work that they've been doing in that regard. How long did it take the executive to buy into that, and where were they sitting in respect of understanding the potential risk to the bottom line by taking a stance like that? And was there an understanding of, absolute clear understanding of the power and support that they have in a non-white segment of the population in America alone, let alone the rest of the world, that a shift in negative sentiments towards the brand would obviously lead to a downturn in sales, but the buffer of support and the groundswell could actually bring others along into preferring the brand because they've made this particular start. So, was there a balance of a conversation? Fascinating to know when that decision was made, how quickly it was made, and what they understood as the potential risk to the bottom line would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Craig, what role does purpose have in brand activism? Because it can really, it could sway things considerably. And, just to add, like, maybe this is a conversation that people should be paying attention to for 2023, right? As a brand, right? What are you supporting in the name of pushing, the common good agenda?
Yeah, that.
And what are you doing? What are you, as your brand, as the brand owner, what are you doing to push that agenda? Because I think it's important that we start thinking that way.
And every market has a particular need, and what are brands, universal brands like this, obviously making great statements for causes universally, but there's a cascade into each specific localized market where there may be other issues at hand that the brand can behave differently in that particular market, or other brands in those markets stepping in to help. But yeah, a great question, Kevin. And the article titled "Finding Purpose: How Ben and Jerry's Patagonian Peloton Are Using Brand Activism to Build Lifelong Loyalty." And this article addresses the point in detail. The article was written by Rachel May Quinn and published to audience.com. On the Spotlight Analysis blog, and it was posted on the 11th of December. So yeah, this point of view is only 2 days old, Kevin. The article notes that while many brands put focus on customer engagement, social activism is close to the hearts of many consumers, and brands that are able to deliver authentic, purposeful campaigns are more likely to enjoy customer relationships that last a lifetime. So what we learn, the following on why purpose matters for brands. 66% of high growth brands say they see purpose as a means to guiding employee decision making, and importantly, giving them the competitive advantage. So great, guiding employee decision making, really important. 68% of consumers believe that they have the power to force corporations to change. 86% of consumers expect CEOs of companies to speak out on social issues, and 57% of consumers are likely to be more loyal to brands that commit to addressing social inequities, and consumers are actively looking to support brands that share their values. But important to note, it must be done authentically and with clear actions. Again, going back to Gen Z. But on that point, there's a couple of really great direct references to our conversation last week on Generation Z. And these 4 points are noted as follows. Activism matters more to Gen Z and young millennials, with 62% of people aged 18 to 26 saying that they want to collaborate with brands on addressing social issues such as racism, climate change, and gender inequality. Young Gen Z consumers aged 14 to 17 say that they will buy from brands based on their beliefs, and they actually prefer to have brands make a world a better place over brands making them a better person. Really interesting statement. They prefer to have brands make the world a better place over brands making them a better person. And that plays into the greater good conversation that you picked up on.
Yeah.
40% of Gen Z are likely to boycott brands that don't take a stand on social issues or deliver on their promise. 34% more than millennials. So as you can see, last week I stated I'd wonder what these percentages would be like with Gen Alpha, because if you go 34% then millennials, Gen Z is definitely going to see a massive growth into the Gen Alpha space.
Yeah.
And the stakes have never been higher, and success depends on converting brand purpose into action. After all, purpose without action is actually quite pointless, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, and Craig, it's exactly to the point why I have a job and why I get to do what I do. Purpose without action is completely pointless. And and I think one of the themes is one of the themes that are standing out for me specifically is there's enough talking happening, right? It's time that we start actioning. And I was getting feedback from one of my clients today around coaching, and And she was saying, you know what, the reason why she enjoys the coaching process is because I'm quite strict and I hold you accountable, right? And I think that's what we need. We need brands to really hold themselves accountable and take action to the things that they commit to saying and doing, right? So I'm all for, and I think what we should do, Craig, you know, in the new year is find some of these brand activists and who are progressive and wanting to make a statement. I know that, you know, if we look at cleancreatives.org /South Africa, Clean Creatives, you know, specifically want people to recognize the importance of climate change and, you know, how brands are supporting brands who are specifically involved in fossil fuels. They're, you know, as much as they're a small sort of entity, a micro business, but yet just the conversation starter that they're actually having is really pushing that agenda. So cleancreatives.org, guys, go and check it out. It's an amazing brand, and what they're doing is really spectacular.
Absolutely.
Craig, but I mean, like, as we close the show, what are the key takeaways from today's conversation?
Kevin, yeah, to wrap up our last show for the year, I want to reference 3 simple but really key points from the founding purpose, how Ben and Jerry's Patagonia and Peloton are using brand activism to build loyalty, lifelong loyalty article. And by adopting these 3 points, brands definitely have the opportunity of putting purpose at the heart of their marketing efforts going into 2023. So the 3 points are noted as follows. The first point is understand what really matters to your audience. And brands obviously have values and ethics that represent what they stand for. But if brands want to attract and really retain lifelong customers, brands need to make sure that their value matches up with those of their customers. Brands really need to dig into what matters to their audiences and create campaigns that will have maximum impact on their audience. A slightly different take on this particular point is from the Purpose Power Index 2022 Purpose Power Summit, published May 2022. And we note the following statement here. Purpose matters when consumers act on it, and companies must understand, identify, connect with consumers who are precisely aligned with and share their company's higher purpose. The second point is focus on authenticity and transparency, and this plays so beautifully into the Gen Z conversation of last week. The most important part of developing a brand with purpose is to ensure that the brand strategy is both authentic and transparent. Brands must make sure that any campaigns they run must align with customers, and that they, the brands, must be prepared to listen to customer feedback and respond appropriately. The third point is collaborate with experts. And I came across this in 2 different readings, and a really good point here. So nobody expects a brand to know everything. And as social issues can be quite a sensitive subject, brands need to make sure that they approach these social issues in the right way. It's therefore important for brands to consider collaborating with nonprofit organizations, with influencers, with their own employees or other experts in the spaces. These entities really will help the brands shape an approach that resonates with the audience. Again, a slightly different take on this point is from the article titled Brand Activism, Turning Your Purpose into Action, written by Kian Bakhtiari and published on entrepreneur.com on the 8th of March 2019, we note the following 2 points from this article. The complexity of global issues is far too great for anyone to tackle alone. Such problems require new thinking, innovative approaches, and an unprecedented level of collaboration. To use a famous African proverb, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We can't save the world in silos. Doing so requires collective, collaborative action. To change the things for better, brands need to look beyond their own boundaries. This means collaborating with startups, with individuals, with civil society, and so-called competitors to co-create a more equitable and sustainable future for all. Really great paragraph to end with, Kevin, and those are the key highlight points for today's conversation.
Fantastic, Craig. Thank you for sharing some really insightful information around becoming one of those activists. I think we need more of them. We need more of these conversations happening. And I think it's a nice sort of look at what 2023 could potentially bring us, where we, actively,
Yes.
as having a platform like we do have, is share more information that really promotes the common good, and to do it intentionally, I think. Craig?
And sorry, just to that point, Kevin, whilst we're all in this opportunity of, disengaging from the emotional torment of the year and work pressures, and that part and parcel of that could be just a refreshing of self and getting to understand what your activation activities could be for the year ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Craig, so I mean, some of the things that we never actually share with people. What is your highlight of 2022?
Given the fact that we continue to show we started in 2021, and amidst all of the pressure, we've not missed a beat this year. We're now closing the year out at 92 shows. You're obviously including the shows we commenced with in 2022. And for me, that's really been great. With all of the pressures, there's just been an amazing ability for me to focus, find some great insights and innovation, and use this as a wonderful learning platform to just expand knowledge on so many more topics and concepts, and just for us to be able to repackage it and feed it back into our listener base.
Absolutely, and I would agree. I think for me, the fact that we've, even on holidays where I was traveling or you were traveling in a different country,
correct,
we were online doing the show, and we haven't skipped a beat. So you are probably one of the most consistent things I have in my life.
What is your
thank
you. What is your standout point?
I think the shows is definitely one of the standout points, and it's one of the things that I love doing, and that's why we're still doing it, and we're still passionate to do it. I think for me, it's being able to have gone through a few brands, probably three major brands this year, and working very closely with them. And just seeing the actual impact and turnaround that as a coach, as a businessman, as someone who works in an environment that really wants to help and get people to relook at themselves and relook at their abilities and the outcomes that's come from that. It's completely blown my mind, which has also put me in a position of going, well, if I could do that, then imagine what I can do next, right?
Yeah, fantastic.
So, and last question that I have for you, Craig, that no one would ever guess. What is something that we don't know about you that you could share with us on air?
I've been asked this once before in a conference, and I spent 2 days in a prison cell.
Holy sure, I was about to swear. Why?
It's many years ago. I booked an incredible trip. I'm an avid sailor, and I booked a Guletin trip in Croatia. Paid a travel agent a lot of money. Was living in London at that point. Jumped on the plane, arrived in Croatia at Split, or one of the main airports, only to be tossed in a prison cell for having an incorrect visa. So at that point, Croatia wasn't a whole component of the EU, so I needed a Schengen Plus visa, but I arrived there just with a Schengen visa, and he was literally going to stamp the passport to let me in when the guy picked it up, and he just went to the back, called to officials, and they took me off, and I spent 2 days in a prison cell without really understanding the language, trying to get to define, to me in clear and certain terms why the hell I was sitting there. But what I did is I sort of kept my BlackBerry hidden in my jocks, so that when I did get to the prison cell, I Googled the South African embassy to try and get help in Croatia. It was a public holiday, so they were closed. Googled the South African embassy. You're just trying to retain battery life as long as I could.
Yeah.
They weren't open. I eventually got the number of the airport I was staying at, so I phoned the police department of the airport I was staying at from the prison cell and called the guy to come into the cell to please explain to me what the hell was going on and why I was there. And I think the biggest fear of all of that was getting a stamp in my passport saying I was deported because that would impact on my work permits in the UK. So I had a long conversation with the guys, showing them all of my paperwork that I actually was there on a legitimate bought holiday. So they just made a note in my passport that I wasn't deported. I was just given a chance to go back and get the correct visa and could re-enter within 14 days. Yeah, that was an incredibly traumatic experience.
Yeah, sure.
And you absolutely rescind every level of power that you think you have. You have to just let it go and work with the system to ensure that you're not compromising yourself in any way, because there was no way that I would want to never be able to travel to Europe again.
Exactly, yeah. Well,
God,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
that was a hell of a learning.
Well, there we go. Now,
Yeah,
now we know more about you. Well, Craig, thank you so much. Thank you for today. Thank you for 92 shows in, and thank you for 2022. It's been an absolute blast, and thank you for spending some wine drinking with me. We did that last week, Wednesday as well. And I look forward to 2023.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thank you. Yes, to a great year ahead.
Chat to you soon. Thanks,
Thanks.
Craig.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.